Hello and welcome to the Leadership Transition course. In this module, we will continue with looking at the definitions of both leadership and transition. So, what is actually leadership? Leadership is defined as something or a skill, actually a practical skill, that encompasses the ability of an individual, group, or organization to lead, influence, or guide other individuals, teams, or organization. In other words, as an individual, you have the leadership skill when you are able to guide or lead people or convince them or make them go in a certain direction that you would like. And what is transition? Transition, like the name implies, is simply going from one state to another, or one point to another, or one way of looking at things to another way of looking at things. It depends on how you want to look at it. So it could be a job transition, but in the end, you want to go from one thing to the next. And what does this imply? When you look at transition, you look at things like the future, the concept, going from one concept to another. It also involves a bit of motivation. It involves change because you're going from one state or thing to another. And also, it could involve something new. Actually, it should be new because that is why it is also transition. The subject may not be new, but to you, moving from one thing to another, it changes state. And therefore, when you go through transition, there are things you keep in mind. For example, it can begin with uncertainty and sometimes with some excitement and anticipation. For example, I want to start a new role or do something new. You're excited, but there's also some level of uncertainty to it. It may also be that you want to end something, you're okay with a particular role or job you're doing and you want to go to the next job. Just like we explained for John, who is a PhD and who is one of our fictional characters in one of our scenarios, who is looking at, before I make a change, before I end my PhD career, what do I need to know? So there's a high level of uncertainty. He could also be confused and have some frustration about that. There will also be skepticism as well as some anxiety. And also as human, we get some resistance to change. But then when you start finding out the information and start taking steps in that transitional zone, then you can start also getting a bit innovative, as well as at some point start becoming committed. And even in that transition phase, you might still, be exploring a lot, which also brings a level of confusion and uncertainty as well, until you get to that commitment level and maybe you can really tune into your new beginning. And of course, after a while, you might want to transition into things again that are different. But then compare it to leadership, which means you have to have some level of skills like how you empower people. Leadership involves inspiring people, being able to, make people listen to you, what you say. Should be able to lead people and lead change and be able to share vision, help people think beyond what they see. And this is basically how you can look at leadership and transition. You can also look at it in terms of phases. So when you talk about leadership transition together, it has to do with a significant change in a leader's role. It could be as a result of promotion or moving from one organization to another, or whatever the reason might be. But a transition will involve something like first trying to learn as much as you can in order to understand the situation. You assess your skills. Do you have the right skills? Do you have what it takes? And then you also face or look at how you communicate with people, how you get to do with things, which is actually one of the most important, as we will learn. And then how you act and what kind of actions and what do they mean. And of course, transition in organization definitely, or in many places, do have a pipeline. An example would be as you can be working as an individual contributor, or you do your own tax as an engineer like James, and then his manager, James' manager in one of our case study, asked him to become a team lead. And that will take him to more or less what will be considered as a first level leader. And later on, maybe James likes it and would like to grow more into something like a project lead, or even managing businesses at high level within the organization, and can go all the way to senior executive or chief executive in the long term. And all this shows the different phases and pipelines. And that helps you understand that in transitioning as a leader, the number of phases you go from learning, assessing, communicating, and acting, and looking at in the long term how you want to go and where you want to end up. So this brings us to the end of this particular class. Thank you.